Well, these are a very interesting little gadget that Healey owners will be familiar with, and this is a door check strap, and the idea is that when the door is opened, these hold them open with friction, and they're really quite ingenious. This is the one off the right hand side, and what happens is that this little gadget here locks around that nut, so that as you open the door, that nut turns. This one's off the right hand side, as I say, so this has a left hand thread on it, so I have to turn it that way, which is a bit counterintuitive to undo it. And there's a little sort of spring system there which provides tension, and then underneath here is a friction disc and another small sort of anti-rattle type spring in the middle there. Now the discs are available. These were worn out. I'm not quite sure what they're supposed to be made of. I had one in there, it looked like it was Bakelite, but it was very thin, so I happen to have some Bakelite. Not sure where it came from. I've had it for years, I think off an old fridge or something. So I cut this one out of Bakelite and decided to make my own, because, well, it's not that I'm cheap, because I don't mind spending money on the restoration if it needs it, but I had some there, so I thought I'd give it a go. So I guess the idea is I've got to remember to do this up left hand thread. Very strange feeling doing up a bolt anti-clockwise, but there you go. So I suppose the idea is that you tighten that up so that it's, when the door's open, the friction is there. That goes on there and holds that in place, and then there's a little tiny lock screw there with a star washer, anti-rattle washer I think they call them. So that as we open the door, that then tightens up. In fact, that's probably too tight there, and that holds it open. And of course as we close the door, it loosens off. So they are, it's quite ingenious, the things people thought of in those days, and a lot of work has gone into making these. And of course there's one for the left and the right hand side, and they have to be kept in the correct position when you take them off. I've stamped this one right so I know which way it goes. So that's it. Not all that interesting, but fascinating. The door check strap off a Healey. Here's another little job I've decided to do. I'm still waiting on my front mudguard repair pieces from Kilmartin, so I decided to have a go at this, which of course is the gearbox cover off the car, and fairly dull, uninteresting piece of work to repair, but it's got to be done nonetheless. And you can see this is very badly rusted out here, here, and on the side just there. So I'm not quite sure how to go about repairing this. I've obviously got to make new bottom pieces, which is not overly difficult, but I'm tempted to just cut across here and fold up the new pieces and plug weld them. It really depends how bad this piece of metal is here as to whether I have to come up and weld across the top, which I'm hoping to not have to do. The metal appears solid, but until I clean it up I won't know whether there's enough there for me to weld onto. A couple of plug hole things here which have rubber plugs in them. That one's to fill gearbox up, and this one, which I haven't seen referenced anywhere, but I think it's for greasing of the universal joint, and that I guess has the same sort of plug in it. So it's a side shift box, so there's the shifter hole. So that's, I guess, is probably the next thing that I'm going to do. Alright, so what I've done here is cut this section off, as you can see, just along that line there, and the same on the other side, which I can't see at the moment because it's around the back there. But so the idea now is to make another one of these pieces, and I think what I'll do is I'll make another one of those with a very slight upturn on it, that will fit just behind here, maybe about, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch, 10mm, 1/4 of an inch, something like that. And then I'll seam weld, I think, across right around the whole length and clean that up. I think that's the best way to do it. Some of this is a bit rotten, so I'm going to weld in a section here to replace a couple of these sections here. They're a bit weldy from the, a bit rusty from the back. So that's the next thing to do. Making this piece won't be too difficult, but getting the bend over on this curved piece will. I'll probably have to make a little wooden shape and beat it around that, I would think. Anyway, we'll see how we go. That's the next step. Because I'm making this little flange in 2 pieces, I just thought I'd show how I shape these pieces. It's probably a bit old-fashioned, but unless you have specialized metal shaping equipment, you really have to do it by hand. And this piece isn't crucial, not like a wing repair panel or anything like that. And the rear wing panels, I did the same sort of way, and they work quite well. So it's probably a bit hard to make head or tail of this, but what I've done is I've cut some bits of scrap timber that I had into this shape of this flange. I then intend to bend this over this way, and the reason I've scalloped these away here is because the wider the flange is, the harder it is to bend around a tight circle. So I've just narrowed that off. So I'll have a go at that now and see if it works. So here is the piece after I've done that little bit of beating. I just cleaned it up a little bit with the dolly and the vise there. But it's not bad, and that will fit then, once I've cleaned all the rust off this, of course, and cut another repair panel to fit in there. That actually will fit underneath there. And I'll either weld that along the outside edge here, or I'm thinking I might just plug weld it from behind by punching some holes through this flange. The only reason I made this in 2 sections, I now have to make the front section here. The only reason I made it in 2 sections is that I didn't actually have a piece of scrap steel that was long enough. This is 1mm thick steel. I don't know what gauge that equates to, but 1mm, which is pretty spot on what they used originally. So here's the second piece done, and this was much easier because it's just a straight run. This curve is difficult to do the flange on. So here are the 2 pieces. So what I'll do now is just weld those 2 together and then clean it all up into one piece. I made myself some little welding clamps which I'm anxious to try out. They hold the metal apart by about, this is 1/2 mil steel. You've probably seen these sorts of things, they're quite readily available, but I had a bit of steel here, so I thought I'd make some. All good fun. See if they work. So this is the second bit, and I've just started beating it over this wooden former. A bit hard to do while I'm holding a camera, but this is the process. So we just sort of work along. Like this, and this has got a slight curve on it, so there could be a couple of spots here where it may not quite go, and we might have to just make a little cut there and weld or finish it off with a dolly. But that's the process, and I'll finish this one off now and we'll see what happens. So here we go. That just comes out of the one-handed wooden mold, and as you can see, it actually works quite well. I had to take a little dart out there to get that curve there, but I thought I'd have to anyway. So that's the process there. This is the other side flange, which will go on the bottom of that gearbox cover, and I think I'll probably use my hole punch and punch some holes along here and perhaps plug weld it onto the old cover, and use some seam seal on the inside so that it doesn't get any moisture in there. Incidentally, I use a jigsaw with a metal cutting blade to cut out all this steel, and I find that works quite well for me, on flat surfaces. So hopefully this sort of clarifies what I've just done, in that I've made 2 new replacement pieces with some flanges for the gearbox cover. And it's taken me probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours to do that, I guess. So that's not bad going. Well, after 3/4 of a day's work, this actually looks like it's come up okay. I'm absolutely pleased with it. What I've done is placed both of those flanges on the bottom there, and I was initially going to weld all the way along here, but of course this isn't structural, so what I thought I would do, just to make things a bit easier for myself, is to plug weld this. So what I've done, just see there, I've put a row of plug welds in there, which of course is quite similar to spot welding, but stronger. And also there's the other side there as well. So although this hasn't all been cleaned up, I've ground off all the rust behind that seam, and what I'll do is I'll run some seam sealer through there before I paint it, so that we don't get any moisture up underneath there. And also, I can do this single-handed, and also I'll run some seam sealer along here when all this has been cleaned up. That's just an area there that I put a patch in that was rusty. So I think that'll be okay when it's all cleaned up and painted. That should be good. So all in all, pretty good day's work, and it appears as though it fits pretty well into the car. I'll still have a little bit of fettling to do on that, but it's okay. Good.